Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we got a lot going on tonight. I tell you what, we wrapped up a crazy red snapper season for the East Coast, 3 days. And I would venture that you can take any one of those 3 days, and one of them was the most number of boats to ever fish the East Coast of Florida in a single day. I've never seen anything like it. I saw some great fish being caught. I also saw some great fish being thrown back that did not survive. We want to discourage that. But 3 days is what we got. In 3 days, thankfully, we had good weather and the fishing was good. But around the state, there's a lot going on, and we're going to check in with everywhere. Oh, my goodness, where are all the sailfish coming from down south? This week's Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature back together. By Tournament Master Chum, it's the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream Costa Rican destination. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Let's get our trip around the state started. I tell you what, we're going to take a detour first. We're running over to Paradise and find out what's going on at Nosara. I got to have my billfish fix, and then I promise we'll bring it back to Florida. We'll work it down the East Coast and back up the West Coast until you know everything you need to know about what's going on fishing-wise in the state of Florida. So let's get it started with a quick trip to Nosara Paradise Rentals and talk to Mr. Craig Sutton. Craig, I saw your post online, and when you start catching more than one blue marlin per day in your boats, you're just showing off.
They are. They're having a good marlin bite this year. It's been really good. But how about this big Dorado?
Man, they are some fun ones.
We got 3 in the last 2 weeks that they're definitely over the 40-pound mark. I wouldn't call them over 50. One of them could have been, but that's some big fish, you know. I mean, it's just that's a once-in-a-lifetime Dorado.
That's great fishing. Now, Craig, were those fish caught live baiting or were they caught pulling ballyhoo?
Pulling ballyhoo.
Really? Isn't that something?
Now, a few of those marlin are live bait now. We had what's his name, Johnny Bruner, down last week, and they pulled up some debris and had 2 bonitas ready to go in the tuna tubes. Marlin come up, drop that bonita to them, and they just don't refuse those bonita or yellowfin.
No.
I mean, they'll refuse a blue runner. They call them Jay Weeches in Costa Rica, but they'll refuse those, but they never turn those bonita or the yellowfin down. I mean, it's the perfect pitch bait. And when they swallow it, they hit it with vengeance. Cool. I mean, it's really, really cool.
You ever turn an ice cream cone down?
No.
Okay, there you go. Exactly. I mean, it's not hard to figure out what they're thinking. Yes, I'm full, but oh yes, I will have another. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, you gotta figure those tuna are just as good for them to eat as they are for us. You know, it's like pure protein. Here we go.
Boy, you're not kidding. Craig, what's going on?
We had some good inshore fish too, Ricky. We had some good roosters last week. I think we had like 3 really, really good roosters and had, you know, some small ones and missed and that kind of stuff. But we had 3 of them that between 40-ish and 50. That's a nice rooster.
Oof, man.
I say we got one of them on a ballyhoo, drifting a dead ballyhoo.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
If anybody wants something to compare them to, it would be like a Jack Crevalle, a 50-pound Jack Crevalle that jumped.
Yeah. That's right.
That's
incredible. A Jack Crevalle with a bad haircut.
That's right. Hey, let me ask you a question. Has anybody gone up the river there snook fishing recently?
Javi goes pretty much every day. I mean, he's there 3 or 4 or 5 mornings a week, and he's been catching a few. Nothing serious, you know. He got one last week that looked like it's probably 20-ish, 30-ish. You know, they got the terrain such an advantage for them, and they know those rocks are there, and so it's they're going to cut you off on the rocks. You get one out of 10 that you hook, but they're usually a real good fish.
Let me tell you, 1 out of 10 for those fish, that's that's fine. I mean, if the action's there, the people really need to take a day and explore that, because that's almost an untapped fishery, isn't it?
It really is. And, me and you talked about our groups coming down in August. I got one group. I'm going to put them in some kayaks and drift down that river and see if they can pull one of those big snooks from underneath those weeping willow trees. They're there. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of them. It's that super clear water, and they want something perfect, laid up in front of them, just perfect. So we'll find out. We'll see.
I'll bet you Captain David Boreas, who I happen to know is going to be going down there in August, I bet you he'll figure it out.
I think he will. I'm tickled plumb to death to have him down there, him and Rob Coxey, that's for sure.
That'll be fun. Hey, buddy, we appreciate the report as always. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Absolutely. Be looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Craig. Craig Sutton from Nosara Paradise Fishing. Okay, we get started up in the northeast corner of Florida with our main man, Captain David Boreas. David, how are you?
Hey, Ricky, I'm staying dry, but just barely.
Man, are thunderstorms getting worse, or are we getting older?
Man, there was some bad ones. I mean, you just got to keep your eye on the radar, one eye on the horizon, and keep looking for redfish. But early in the morning we seem to be okay. That seems to be the ticket. Although I'm starting to come into my night fishing season. This is when those trout start showing up under the lights. So, I got a night trip this week. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping to see some good trout. I'm sort of curious to see how my light trip is going to go, because, I've been saying, Rick, it hasn't been a great trout year for us up here. I mean, we're just not seeing the numbers or the size like we used to over the years. But flounder bite's been good this week, and actually some bigger flounder, and I've heard of some good ones being caught this week. And it sounds like some really nice ones down towards St. Augustine, close to the inlet. I think these flounder, Rick, are starting to move. They should be all around your dock by now.
Well, I can tell you this much. There's one less under my dock than there was an hour ago. Does that tell you anything?
I bet. Now, the redfish have been showing themselves in the morning. We've had some of these I like this higher water in the morning. I'm still trying to fish the high outgoing tide. It seems that's when the clean water is. The low water's been very, very muddy, but we're still catching the reds. It doesn't seem to bother the reds. I think that could be some of our trout issue also, is all this muddy water. I know the trout they tend not to like the muddy water. So they could, it could be, there could be a lot of trout just sitting right off the beach off into the ocean. We just don't know, but there's not a lot of them inshore. But they have been a lot of mangrove snappers. And it's like, my God, they're just getting bigger and bigger every week, these fish. I'd like to know how much they grow in a week, but it's unbelievable. The 12 and 13 inches we're seeing now. Talked to a captain today. He said he caught a lang snapper today, and first one he's ever seen inshore. I've caught a couple of them, real tiny, little bitty lang. I have seen mutton snapper inshore, but just one or two lang snapper I've caught inshore, and they're beautiful fish when you catch them. But he saw his first one today and really thought it was unusual. But other than that, Ricky, it's just redfish. Got a nice oversized redfish today, a young man fishing with me. I had two little brothers, and the one brother was really out fishing the other brother. So I really worked hard on the guy that wasn't catching much, and he ended up catching a 30-inch red. Ooh, he didn't get the numbers, but he got the quality today. So they both got bragging rights. One got most fish, the other got biggest fish.
I tell you what, you are one of the guys that realizes how important kids are to your business. I mean, those. Oh,
absolutely.
Those boys want to go fishing again. Who are they going to want to go with?
Rick, I tell you, something I've put, and I don't know where this reputation came from, but somehow it got passed around and got put on my website and stuff like that. I like to take young kids fishing, and And that's one of the things my bio usually says. I love taking kids fishing. And people read that, Rick. And I'm telling you, young captains out there, if you're listening to this, you better be good with kids and you better put the word out, because let me tell you, it's been very good for Captain Dave's business.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Well, Cap, I hope the rain doesn't get too tough on you. Now, I'll tell you a funny story, and it'll speak to fishing pressure. I texted you a couple weeks ago that I had a new idea on catching mangrove snapper. And I have a big rock pile by my house, and I started drifting minnows on speckled perch rigs under a brimbuster pole over the rock pile at my house. And we had a ball, David. We had a 15-incher. We had a bunch of 12-inchers. We had, mangrove snapper. And I thought, oh, my gosh, I've discovered this new thing, and I've got a never-ending source of mangrove snapper. And then the next day we caught 2, and then we didn't catch anymore.
Yeah, they do move around, I think, a lot, Rick. But Rick, do you remember seeing mangroves back when you were younger fishing these waters?
Yes, but not to this number. Yes, I caught them as a kid up in Trout River, but none of them were bigger than your hand. I mean, they were tiny. We didn't know what they were. We called them rock bass, but looking back on it now, they were obviously mangrove snapper. But
well, Rick, how did the Kingfish tournament go this weekend? The big Jacksonville Kingfish tournament. How was the offshore going?
It went okay, David. It didn't take a real big fish to win it. It seems to me like it was a 42-something. There was a good number of fish caught, and there was a good number of fish that placed in the money caught on the beach, which is what's important. Now, rumor has it that the aggregate winner was in 21 fathoms off of St. Augustine. But I know of some quality fish and fish that won money that were caught on the beach, and that's very good for the tournament. The tournament has to have beach fish and be able to make the guy with the 24-foot bay boat competitive, if you understand what I'm saying. We can't turn it into a tournament where you have to run 50 miles offshore to catch a fish that's worth being in the weigh-in. Now, there are boundaries and there are outside boundaries, but in my opinion, they've got them too far. I want to see this tournament fished within 20 or 30 miles of Jacksonville. Then you've got everybody fishing out of the same pond.
That's good, Rick. That's real good. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Get those little boats in, and the numbers are going to come up.
That's exactly right. If you've got a good chance in a 24 bay boat, then you've got a lot of people that want to compete. David, as always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
I'll be here, Rick.
All right, Captain David Voorhees with a great report coming out of Northeast Florida. Hey, David and all our action spotters are brought to you every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Our thanks to David Voorhees for a great Northeast Florida report. Now, I've heard rumors of John Earhart and a bunch of sailfish, and we're going to skip right on down to Stewart and find out what's happening down there. John, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
You sent me a picture of a jumping sailfish in July. What's going on down there?
Well, it seems like I was wrong. The sail fishing is on an uptick again. As per usual, 60 to about 180 feet of water right now. I'm literally just driving out the inlet in the morning. I'm loading up on live bait. The thread fins are going to be my bait of choice. Goggle eyes. Occasionally you'll get those, but thread fins are going to be the easiest bait to come by. I typically try and have at least 3 dozen, because I'm going to have to weed through some bonitas, blackfin tuna, maybe a couple mahis. So I want to have enough baits to where I can catch a handful of sails while I'm out there. I'm just drifting those about 50, 60 yards behind the boat, maybe on a float, or sometimes I'll even put a weight on. If I'm getting a lot of cutoffs, I'll put a small tracer piece of wire on, and you may pick up a few kingfish and even a wahoo right now. And again, most of that action is right around anywhere from 60 to 180 feet, with 90 feet being your average go-to depth for pretty steady action right now. We've had pretty calm weather as we'd expect in July. So, I mean, it's relatively easy. You go out, you see some fish free jumping, you set up in that area, and, typically you're going to wait maybe half an hour and you're going to be hooked up to a couple sails.
How about that? That's outstanding. Now, let me ask you something. You mentioned you were drifting. My experience down there, some boats drift. It looks to me like everybody kite fishes if they can, if they've got either helium or enough wind. But some boats drift and some boats bump troll or troll very slowly with a sea anchor. What do you prefer?
I prefer to drift when the conditions allow, but sometimes you will find that trolling the bait is a little more effective. It varies trip to trip. I personally don't like trolling a live bait because you wind up killing baits faster that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I have like a live well packed full of baits, yeah, I'll start trolling to cover more ground. But typically I find drifting, it has a more natural presentation and it lends itself to catching more fish, and when the wind is present, the kite fishing is hands down going to catch the most fish because you don't have that line trailing in the water. You're less likely to get fouled up on seagrass. I mean, kite fishing is the number one way to get them. Drifting would be number two. Trolling would be number three, in my opinion.
Gotcha. John, we got word from the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council. Now, I'm not sure if it's into effect yet or what the ultimate result's going to be, but the reports is that Mahi, which in my estimation need a whole lot of help, because I don't know about you, but I'm sure not catching them like I used to. They went from, the only thing they reduced was the overall boat limit from 60 to 54. Size limit stays the same, 20 inches to the fork. Bag limit, 10 per person, stays the same. I just don't think that's right. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to regulate something, you need to make a change to where it's going to be a significant change, and I just don't see a real significant change there. And to be honest with you, we can regulate the heck out of these things, but if other countries are wiping them out before they get to us, it's not really going to make a whole lot of difference, Rick.
Yeah, I can see that part of it, but I still feel led to do all we can to preserve it. I just don't feel like any party of six guys needs 54 Mahi.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think you do either. But I do get guys, they want to go out and they want to fill up a freezer. So it's like, in one hand, yeah, I want to let them do it, but on the other, it's like I want to be able to go out there and catch Mahi year round and have them be plentiful. So I totally see both sides of the coin there.
Well, that's well said. What are you hearing from the inshore down there?
Oh man, the inshore fishing's been spectacular this week. 2 days ago, I went 26 for 34 on snook. They were all over 35 inches. So I mean, it was pretty phenomenal. So I mean, we got a lot of big snook around right now. They're relatively easy to catch. They're getting ready to spawn. These are some fat fish. So definitely treat them with care. Release them quickly. Take pictures with the big fish, but if you're catching that many fish, just get them up close to the boat, release them boat side, and let them swim free. There's no need to bring them in the boat and drop them on the deck a few times if you don't have to. So a nice quick release, catch your fish, and then maybe move on so that other people can do the same. It's been pretty steady. Tarpon fishing's been pretty decent around the channel edges. I've hooked a couple fish this week over 100 pounds, but most of them have been 5 to about 25 pounds. And we're fishing either small pilchards or larger live mullet. Wow.
That's some outstanding fishing. I tell you what, everybody puts down July, and I do the same thing. I was hooked on sailfish for 30 years before I ever went down and started fishing down there in the summertime. But I got to tell you, your guys' summertime fishery, both inshore and offshore, is really almost second to none.
Yeah, and we just had a summertime sailfish tournament out of Fishhead's Tackle Shop. There were some bay boats competing, and then there was some larger sport fish boats competing. I saw about 9 to 15 fish caught on most of these boats. So, I mean, most of the guys are catching 2 or 3 fish a day, during this small 2-day tournament. So there are a few tournaments in the summer. There's definitely a lot of fish. So, I mean, if you like catching sailfish and you like calm seas, July is the month for you.
It never gets too calm to scare me, John Earhart, I'll tell you that. Cap, we appreciate it. Is it all right if we talk to you next week?
Yes, sir. I look forward to giving you a report next week.
Thank you, Captain John Earhart from the Mayhem and the Chaos. Now, let's hop it on down south a little further and check in Miami with the mayor himself, Alan Sherman. Alan, how are you?
Doing just fine, Rick. How are you?
Good, good. Man, are you getting the thunderstorms we're getting in Northeast Florida?
I'm happy to say, no, we're not.
Woo! Man, we're getting some doozies. It's rumbling outside my house right now.
Well, we had them last week, and they were, it was like nonstop, lightning, thunder, big winds, you name it, we had it. But it's spared us this week, and thank God, because it's allowed us to do some pretty good fishing most of this week.
Good. What are you catching?
So on the offshore side, the dolphin, the Mahi have moved closer to shore, which is much better. Don't have to spend, a lot of fuel, a lot of time chasing them out in 1,800 feet, 1,000 feet of water. No, now they're closer to the reef, and the guys are catching them right on the first blue water edge, which has had quite a bit of current, attached to it. And that's one of the keys to finding the dolphin. They like that fast-moving water. Just find some weed lines, some patches, some birds, or there has been some floating debris out there, and there's been scattered dolphin on these areas. But a lot of the guys are catching them while they're fishing for kingfish and bonitas and blackfin tunas. All three of those fish and an occasional sailfish have been feeding just outside the outer reef in 80 to like 140, 150 feet of water. And at times that blue water edge has moved in that close, and the guys are catching all of those species all at the same time. So it's made for a much more enjoyable and easy fishing process. Add to it, the mutton snappers are still biting pretty good on the outer side of the outside reef, anywhere from 80 to say 150 feet of water. The current's been running, so the guys are using heavy weights, long leaders. I'm talking 15 feet long, sometimes even longer than that. Fluorocarbon leaders, material, 30-pound test. You could even drop it down less if you wanted to get fancy, but 30's been doing pretty good.
Now, Alan,
yeah.
you're talking 30-pound leaders?
That's right.
Man, that seems light to me for a mutton.
So you're fishing around structure, but you're not fishing in the structure.
Mm-hmm.
You're fishing along the structure in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And these fish, they're Miami fish. They've seen a lot of people drop baits on their heads. So, you got to tone your tackle down to get those strikes. You use that long leader at that heavy weight. So the heavy weight hits the bottom. The leader stretches out with the strong current. You're using a small mustad hook, a big gun, maybe a 1-0. And you're attaching that bait through the lip so that the current keeps it straight out and swimming. And these mutton snappers move in. You go too heavy on the leader material, they'll see that leader material and they'll shy off. They won't touch it. But you drop down to that lighter 30-pound test and they'll gobble it up.
How about
and it makes all the difference in the world. You may lose a few fish, but I'm much happier losing a fish or two if I'm catching a bunch of them. And,
that's right. That's a great
getting
tip.
a limit of fish in the 6 to 10 pound range has not been that difficult if you hit the right spot. So that makes for a pretty interesting fishery. The guys on the wrecks are getting some vermilion snappers and some black groupers, amberjacks when the current allows it. And then moving inshore, there's been a decent trout bite on the grass flats. We had quite a few the other day, and some small residential tarpon, quite a few mangrove snappers in the grass and in the potholes and on the rocky channels. Any kind of structure in the bay, good chance you're going to find a big group of mangrove snappers. One more good fishery. A couple of the guys have been targeting what we call the airport lakes down by 836. In South Miami, and they're catching peacocks, lots of peacocks, largemouth, small tarpon, even snook and jack crevalles in those airport lakes. So that's what we got going on right here, right now.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Alan, I've got a question for you. You've fished offshore, even though I know you're in a bay boat. You've still spent many decades offshore. South Atlantic Council recently, I'm not sure if it's passed or if it is a upcoming piece of legislation. They addressed Mahi and Wahoo. They left Wahoo exactly like it is, and they reduced Mahi from 60 per boat to 54 per boat, and left it at 10 per person. And that was my exact response. I mean, what a colossal waste of time.
I agree. I'm cool with the 10 fish per person. I think because sometimes you have to travel so far offshore. If you made it 5 per person or anything less than 10, you don't get them every time you go out there, and you can spend a lot of time and money trying to target a great fish. 10 per person isn't a lot of fish if you drop the boat limit down. If you, instead of going down 6 fish from 60 to 54, you ask any fishing guide, captain, whatever, how many dolphins does he want to clean when he gets back after an 8 or 10 hour day? He's not going to want to clean 60 fish.
That's for sure.
He's not going to want to clean 54 either. He's going to, be closer to 20 or 30 and be happy with that. And 20 to 30 dolphin, 24 inches or 20 inches or better, you got a lot of fish right there. And you, as I know, mahi dolphin are best when they're fresh.
Oh yeah.
Put them in the freezer for a few days, and it's not the same fish.
Yep. No, I would have gone 5 per person, 30 per boat, but I'm always, and the question is, and I discussed this with Ray Rocher today, and he had some very interesting thoughts on it too. Are we actually seeing a decrease in mahi, or just such an increase of boats that they're spread out among 1,000 extra boats? When I first started fishing the Gulf Stream off Jacksonville, there were days when there were 3 of us or 4 of us, working that edge. And oh my gosh, now, recently Robert Johnson was fishing the edge off St. Augustine, and he said, Cap, I will guarantee you in the 35-mile stretch between St. Augustine and Jacksonville, Florida, there was 1,000 boats.
I can believe it. I know here in Miami, on a weekend or a holiday, you're going to see that many boats out there. And, they're not following the rules per se. There's a lot of guys trying to grab fish from guys that spend a lot of time looking for a school, and they come right up and take them. There's a lot of fish that are undersized being taken. And I do think that, like 90% of those people are not catching any fish and 10% are. But as far as the numbers go, I know that when I go out there in my boat, in a bay boat offshore, I have to wait for the right conditions. We're finding fish. We're not finding big numbers of them. But on the same note, I'm not going 20 miles or more offshore. I'm going less than 12. Mm-hmm. And if the fish are somewhere in that range, I'll bump into them eventually. But I'm friends with some of these guys in Marathon, especially, who have the bigger boats, these big cats.
Right.
And they're going 30, 40 miles offshore, and they're coming back with big numbers of quality size fish. So I know the fish are out there. They're just way too far for me to reach.
That's a good point. Maybe it's the same old story. Maybe we have to go further than we used to. I can remember when 30 miles was the edge of the universe. We thought we'd fall off.
Right.
We wouldn't go without a note from our mother. So, now maybe instead of fishing 60 miles off Jacksonville, we have to fish 120. I don't know. I hope that's not the case.
Me as well.
Alan, I appreciate it as always. Thanks so much for your insight as well as your excellent report. And please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it, Rick.
Thanks, Alan. Captain Alan Sherman from Get 'em Sport Fishing Adventures in Miami.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat Facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Ellen Sherman for a great Miami report. Now let's hop across the state and we'll check out the southwest corner down in 10,000 Islands and find out what Captain Steve Dahl's up to. Steve, are you with us?
I am. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing wonderful, my boy. Tell me about fishing in 10,000 Islands this week.
Well, things are pretty good, actually. It's, we're in a typical summer pattern. Water temperatures are up, but for some reason, our redfish bite the last, probably 2.5 weeks has just been really, really good. And, we have a consistent bite throughout the year, but obviously our peak times are generally in the fall. Where we get generally bigger fish and, the schools of reds. But gosh, it's, we're snook fishing and catching, I wouldn't say as many reds as we are snook, but we're certainly catching quite a few, and they're decent ones. So that's kind of a good thing to see in, the middle or the latter part of July. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're starting to see those first couple of weeks, we could only kind of catch them on cut bait, and meaning like a cut ladyfish or a cut mullet. And, 9 out of 10 times, if you can get fresh ladyfish, that's the route to go.
That's it, buddy.
And you'll catch some big snook. That's not kind of how we stumble down these fish is, in the summertime, we'll, when the fish are kind of sluggish and need some scent in the water, catch a lot of big snook, year over year on cut ladyfish. So, the reds are responded really well. So little non-typical, but it's working really good. So that's kind of on the inshore side. The snook bite's still pretty consistent. The other thing that we're having on the that's really really been very consistent has been the juvenile tarpon bite, and these are fish up to 25-30 pounds, the fun ones you want to catch. You don't need live bait for this. This is all, artificials, and you get small windows throughout the day. It's very tide related, but you look at, the entire, there's so much, geography to pick from when you're fishing the 10,000 islands. But if you ultimately want to do this, take a look at, basically the northern part of the backcountry, okay? And you're going to see a bunch of tributaries, rivers, creeks, all that flowing into, the 10,000 Islands from the Everglades. And this is kind of a tried and true thing, especially in the summertime when we have, the runoff of rain, which kind of creates a pronounced tide, if you will, and some current. And so, you couple that with maybe an afternoon outgoing tide prior to the storms, and boy, it is an all-you-can-eat buffet. These juvenile tarpon will literally just be right in front of these creek mouths and just gobbling up just about any bait fish that comes out of there. So that's a tried and true pretty much, through September during rainy season, and once that'll start to wane once we get into October. But take full advantage of that if you can get out there. It's a great bite right now.
It's funny to me. I got to tell you, Cap, it's funny to me. We've never had any true take of tarpon. I mean, they've pretty much, not that many people fish for them. 99% of them get released, and it's kind of always been that way, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. It really has.
And isn't it funny how our tarpon numbers remain consistent? But you take a fish like a red snapper or a Goliath grouper, and you shut him down and make him all release, and they take over the world.
No, it's a really good point. I mean, I know, maybe the only other thing I would maybe say to that is I don't know if we know the true predation of a tarpon. What are they really, really eating? Are they eating, true game fish like Goliath grouper are and red snapper? I think one of the biggest misnomers we have out there is that folks don't think a 15 to 20 pound red snapper can eat, a mangrove snapper that's 3 pounds.
Oh, sure,
People
can. Yeah.
In a heartbeat they can. And well, I'm pretty sure, I don't know. I don't know there's always such a mystery with tarpon because it's such a nomadic, fish. But you bring up a really good point, that is it's it's one of the most, prized fish we have, and the populations are, especially in our area, it's one of the best places in the world to catch tarpon, all up and down the west coast of Florida, and we just never seem to have an issue with it. So that's a really good point, Rick.
They stay in balance. They don't take over the inland waterways. They don't, they don't become a nuisance fish like red snapper have, but they just kind of hold their own. They're kind of bonita the same way. We don't keep bonita, but there always seems to be a steady supply, but never so many that you can't get away from them. I don't know. Just came to mind. I have crazy thoughts sometimes. Captain Steve, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely.
I'll look forward to it. Captain Steve Dahl. And now we're going to move up into the Big Bend and talk with my old buddy, if he's still speaking to me, William Toney. William, how are you?
I'm doing good, bud. I always speak to my good buddy Rick Riles any day of the week, my friend.
Ooh, William, I got a picture I need to send you. Buddy, I'm going to tell you what, I have got a fine one going to the feeder right now.
Oh, man, dang. I haven't even started. I usually go about August 1st, put my feeders out, but we do have one right down the street from my house that has about a 4-point coming to it in velvet, so maybe his big brother will show up and I can walk down the street and get me one during archery.
Well, I know good and well this one ain't going to stay for the season because they never do for me, but I'm going to wish it will anyway. All right, you ready to do your report?
Yep.
Okay.
We're talking about scalloping and stuff. It's been really good here on the Big Bend. Been no complaints about getting limits and everything. But of course, when you're out there scalloping, I like to tell people if you have the ability or a chance, to plan your trip on the low part of the tide phase during the mid part of the day, you're going to have better luck. Of course, when you got high tide, it's going to be deeper. Or you get around like we're coming toward this weekend with a full moon and mid-afternoon high tides, there's going to be some real big currents. So you got to kind of keep that in mind about that. But, another thing here on the Big Bend that's been a talk, I know a lot of the scallop cleaners here in the Homosassa and Crystal River area have been talking about, folks bringing in some that are about the size of a quarter or not even the size of a half a dollar. So when you're cleaning a scallop like that, basically the meat might be, if you're lucky, big as a pencil eraser.
Yeah, that's no good.
So the talk around town is maybe next year would be something good to come up with. FWC could come up with some type of device that you would have to have on your scallop bag. Same thing like when you lobster in the Keys, how you measure that lobster in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you had that, and it could just be a piece of polyboard or even a plastic device with a round hole. And if you lay that scallop and it falls through that hole and hits back on the bottom, you can't harvest it. And they do grow fast. And over the years, me doing it, I like them around the end of August and first part of September. That's when they're at their largest as far as meat and size goes. And they grow very fast. So early in the season, if you have folks, harvesting the bigger ones, letting the smaller ones grow, you're going to get a more even type of harvest throughout the season, which is going to leave more for the spawn for next year and protect the crop.
What a great concept. Yeah, no, that's outstanding. And it's the same concept, like you say, like they run the lobster on, and it's worked for them. It keeps them in balance. I'd love to see something like that. I didn't realize I went scalloping for like the second time in my life last week. And, the guide was just a super guy, but he warned us. He said, now the current's running really strong, so it's going to be a little tough. Well, I thought, well, that's not going to bother me. I mean, I'm a strong swimmer. I'm not worried about that. But, man, is it hard to find those scallops once that grass lays over.
Absolutely. You get those big tides like that. And then when the grass does lay over all the way, if you can't look down in it. And then if you top that with some overcast conditions, you're out there scalloping like Ray Charles, you're kind of feeling around and looking for them. And, it's still fun and exciting, but it isn't premier conditions. And I always try to tell people, if they can plan their trip, look at your tide phases. A day that you got low tide between, say, 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., somewhere in that range, and you can get in there, that tide's going to be at the lowest, and there's a certain point where, the tide makes a stand where it's not going to move either direction, and that grass will stand up, and it's just like, taking candy from a baby. It's just so easy to find and get them. So, there is a little bit of sport to it, is they just don't swim around and pick them up. And, planning those tides and trying to get your trip during the part of the day where the sun is at its highest and over your head where you can see better definitely helps things out.
Sure makes it easier. Tell me about your fishing.
Fishing's been great. We're actually catching some decent trout, and July's, not your quintessential trout month, so there's still a few around. Catch them in anywhere from 3 to 5 foot of water on your larger bays, like out in front of Crystal River, on the spoil banks, and then in front of the bars at Fort Island and Chesapeake Bays, holding some good trout. And if you find that rock grass that's still surviving, there's some nice trout in there. Red fishing, it's starting to pick up a little bit. It was kind of slow here last week, but schools are starting to show up. Around the full moon in August is when it really kicks off in our area for our redfish. But the fish that I'm targeting now that really I love to catch are mangrove snapper. And I'm not talking big ones like you guys get offshore, but inshore waters from anywhere from 4 to 10 foot, I'm catching 12, 14-inch mangroves on light tackle on 10-pound test. And, man, it's fun.
You want to have a ball? I have discovered how to have the ultimate good time catching mangrove snapper. I bought 2 of those 16-foot collapsible brim buster poles.
No way.
and I'm making a speckled perch rig, just a plain old, cork with a split shot about 3 inches above a little hook, and putting it through the lips of a mud minnow and drifting it over the top of that rock pile. And William Tony, I mean, you will end up howling laughing at doing that.
I bet.
We caught them up to 15 inches off of my
dock.
We broke hooks. We broke lines. We just had a ball.
Well, I never heard of the cane pole fishing for, mango snappers, but that's sporty right there, man.
You ought to try it. I'm telling you, your people would love it.
Well, that's cool. But, we're getting some decent ones, and live shrimp's been the best bait. And as I wrote in my report this week, again, the standing tide, is good for scalloping and good for catching those mangrove snapper. That seems when our bite is really good on those mangoes, when that tide makes a stand right at the high tide. And a lot of times you'll see them on the structure, and you can pick out the one you want to catch.
Gotcha. Perfect. Good job. William, thank you so much. We look forward to talking with you next week, if that's okay.
I'll be here in downtown Homosassa.
All right. Save me some scallops.
TN4.
Talk to you later, Cap. Our thanks to William Tony for a great Big Bend report. Now let's work our way up into the Northwest area and check in with Captain Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, we're doing great today. How about yourself?
Doing outstanding. Tell me there's been some more red snapper caught.
There have been 1 or 2 more red snapper caught since the last time we talked.
I'll be darned. So many guys fishing the Greater Jacksonville Kingfish Tournament last weekend had their days just ruined by a red snapper running them off of some of their favorite kingfish bottom. I've got a video of a buddy of mine hand feeding them, tossing them live pogies, and they were I wouldn't call it a skyrocket. That'd be like calling me dancing, but they bust them right off the top of the water. It's crazy.
Oh, I understand that. We had them today. We were catching them 15 feet below the boat.
Golly. Has it stayed steady for you?
Yeah, it stayed steady. We had a little lull last week, but it's picked back up. The bite today was really good. We got our 12 red snapper. We got some nice mangroves. I'm talking 8 to 10 pounders.
Ooh,
we got some beeliners today. We got a beeliner that hit 6 pounds.
What?
Yep.
6? Oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's a monster, I'm going to tell you what.
It was.
That is
we reeled it up, and I could have sworn it was a red snapper until I got ready to pull in the boat, and I said, holy cow, that is a beeliner.
How about that? That's fantastic. Did you have your limit of beeliners, or were you close to it?
No, we weren't. We got, I think, 6 or 8 beeliners, and I think we got 4 or 5 mangrove snapper along with our dozen red snapper. Right now, we're having a huge shark problem. Good Lord. You know, it's a shame that we're protecting sharks that are eating the red snapper that we're protecting. You know, it just don't make any sense to me.
Oh, William, if we get started on what doesn't make sense to us about fisheries regulations, we're going to be here for the weekend. You know that, don't you?
I understand that. We'll have to talk about that. We'll have to do that sometime.
Whew, my goodness. Well, it sounds like your fishing's good. Have you heard anything from inshore?
Inshore has picked up a bit. There have been a few tarpon hooks around the Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe area. They've been some, and the redfish have picked up a little bit. Trout picked up a little bit. So there's a little more activity going on. You know, been a lot of boomers offshore, so it's kind of kept a few guys close to shore. Triple tail fishing around some of the fads we've got around here. So inshore has definitely picked up.
Oh, good deal. I'm glad to hear it. Cap, we appreciate it as always. We look forward to talking with you next week.
We'll be here. We've got about a week and a half left of red snapper season, and then we'll find something else to do.
And then Kevin's taking a nap. All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Kevin. Man, it's getting hot. And, of course, that means the water is warming up, too. And just like the great fish have always done, the biggest and the baddest of so many species we fish for will soon be holding in the deepest water they can find in an attempt to cool off. You name it. If it feeds deeper in the water column, it cannot refuse a D.O.A. terrorize. It dives straight down and crawls across the bottom with an action no deep feeder can resist. Whether it's a crappie deep under some lily pads or a tarpon rooting around a bridge piling, D.O.A. makes a size and color terrorize that they can't say no to. You go flashing that big bright eye in front of any bottom-feeding game fish, it's just unfair. Well, maybe that's why they call D.O.A. lures the unfair advantage. All right, let's stretch on out into Northwest Florida and check in with Captain Tyler Massey. Tyler, how are you?
We're doing good, Rick. How are you guys?
Good. Tell me what's going on in the Destin area.
So we got sticking to our red snapper fishing, offshore bottom fishing. We're gonna have another week or so of season for recreational anglers, and we're gonna get in about close to 2 weeks for us in the federal charter boat. So we're just looking to close out the season strong. We get kind of a lull in the beginning of July with the bite. It's starting to turn around, and they're starting to bite a little better again. It almost happens every year. Bite slows down. The fish, when you catch them, you notice they spit up a lot of larva type stuff. So it's like they're gorging on something down there, and they don't bite as good. Well, now, we're getting our limits a little quicker now. Some bigger fish are starting to bite again. So, we're just still digging on that.
Tyler, I'm wondering if that's a good thing or not. I'm concerned that the red snapper have gotten so prevalent. Just like you say, the larvae they spitting up, is that our beeliner population? Is that our sea bass population? I don't know.
It definitely could be something like that. I'm not sure what it is, and maybe someone else does. But, every year we notice that, around that first couple weeks of July, like I'm sure maybe over there too, like you catch one, it comes in the boat and it shakes its head, and all kinds of little looking larva looking things come out of their mouth. It's like, they're got to be eating thousands and thousands of baby somethings down there. So, but it is what it is, and it's just something we got to deal with.
Yep. Any word on the pelagics yet from offshore?
So yeah, there's fishing around the fads that we've talked about before, which are anywhere from like maybe mid 50s to 70 miles from Pensacola Pass. There was some good fishing, a couple shots at billfish, white marlin, blue marlin. It seems like the earlier you're there, the better. So some guys go out there, stay the night, and start fishing first thing in the morning. I know of a couple blue marlin, a couple white marlin, some real nice dolphin, and also a couple wahoo being caught all around those fads that we talked about. And all the fad coordinates are listed online. I know for sure on Okaloosa County website, probably on their fishing reef page or whatever, they're all listed on there. So, if you want to look out and do some deep water trolling, that's going to be a good bet for sure.
Yeah, you can actually go, Tyler, on the Florida artificial reefs, and they've got them broken down by county. And every county, every artificial reef is there. It's a fantastic resource that I don't think enough people use.
For sure.
All right, so what are you hearing from inshore? Anything?
Inshore, it's getting to the hot month, so the middle of the day bite's probably not going to be all that great. Early morning trout on the flats over the grass. Fishing artificial is going to be a little more effective this time of year. The live shrimp are going to get eaten up by pinfish in no time at all. So artificials, whether it's like a Berkeley Gulp, like you can rig it like weedless or whatever, or some sort of Miraloo or Miradine hard plastic. Early morning, late afternoon over the grass has been the best bite. Also, the nighttime bite and the dock bite, that's been good too.
Gotcha, outstanding. Yeah, nighttime fishing. This is the time of year for it. As long as we got this much heat, the fish are going to prefer to feed at night. There's no doubt.
For sure. Yep.
Captain Tyler, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check in with you next week.
I will be here, Rick.
I look forward to it. Captain Tyler Massey wraps up what has been a really better than expected for July, not my favorite month, fishing report from all around the state. We'll wrap it up momentarily, but first, let's hear a word from Shimano. The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing hung it up. "I just don't want to do it anymore," Ernest Hemingway is credited with saying. He said the tackle has become so sophisticated that the fish just don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking him through the aisles of Strike Zone Fishing and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighs less than his bait, but it could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? No, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on, and we still do get beat sometimes. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano is stocked in Strike Zone some 68 years later. Hey, it's been a great trip around the state tonight. Tell you what, the northeast quadrant, they've been plagued by thunderstorms a lot, and that dumps a lot of fresh water. But when they do get some clear water, they're getting more big trout than usual. For July, they're doing fair on the reds. They're getting steady again and better on the flounder than we expect in July. Could it be that the new flounder regulations are already paying off? I don't think that's the case, but I'm still glad to see it. You work your way down the coast, and my goodness, Captain John Earhart was certainly excited. They're catching 3 and 4 up to 15 sailfish a day with some mahi to go with them and some blackfin tuna. And even Captain Alan Sherman was raving about how good the fishing's been for them. Their mahi have moved inshore, and they're catching them in really good numbers. Tarpon seems to be the fish of the day down in the southwest area, where Captain Steve Dahl is reporting excellent snook fishing and tarpon fishing. That was another thing about Stewart. Captain John Earhart talking about the snook spawning there and them catching numbers of monster fish. And please do be careful when you release those fish. You get up into the Big Bend, things are wonderful. The scalloping is good. Now, last year wasn't very good, and I'm so glad to see it better this year. And they're also doing very well on mangrove snapper. Kevin Lanier and Red Snapper, they've been having quite a time of it this year. How about a 6-pound vermilion? That doesn't happen every day. Tyler Massey, pretty much the same report. Said the Red Snapper biting even better. He feels like several of the other reef fish have hatched, and the snapper have been gouging themselves on their fry. So it's been a good trip around the state. We certainly want to thank all our action spotters for us, and we also want to thank all our sponsors, such as Yamaha, reliability starts here. Shimano, bringing people back to nature. D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream Costa Rican vacation. And Young Boats, you want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the Rip.